The camera fades in on a dimly lit hotel hallway. Somewhere, a door creaks. Then silence. A woman's lifeless body is found face down in a marble bathtub of a luxury suite. But the water is still warm. Her lipstick is flawless. Her phone is wiped clean. And her lover, he was already gone. You were never supposed to hear this. Not like this. The news headlines called it a tragic accident. The police called it an open-end shut case. But what if I told you none of that was real? What if the truth was carved deeper, into places only the elite understand? You're not looking at a crime scene. You're looking at a ritual. Her name doesn't matter anymore. Not because she isn't real, but because the woman they buried wasn't the one they murdered. She was a message, a whisper passed between the powerful. Her death wasn't random. It was coded, marked, staged. And the man they arrested, he wasn't her killer. He was her handler. You think this is about love gone wrong. No, this is about control. About a woman who tried to escape a system older than law, older than bloodlines. A woman who knew something and threatened to tell. She wasn't killed for what she did. She was killed for what she knew. Inside that hotel room, the temperature was 72 degrees. The curtains drawn. Room service untouched. But the camera outside the door, it glitched for exactly 4 minutes. The logs were corrupted. The concierge who checked her in resigned the next morning. And the surveillance footage, what little remains, shows her entering alone. No one else was recorded going in or out, except she didn't die alone. There's a reason the coroner's report took 19 days to be released. There's a reason the media only covered it for 2. You're not supposed to ask what really happened that night. Because if you ask, if you look closer, you'll start to see the blueprint, the architecture behind the tragedy. This wasn't about love. This was about obedience. They think you'll forget her name. But this isn't just her story. This is a doorway. And once you walk through it, there's no going back. The hotel is still open. The room still rented. But if you stand quietly enough, some say you can still hear the dripping. One drop for every truth buried beneath the marble. And we're just getting started. They called it Suite 636. A penthouse-level room in a 5-star hotel overlooking the city skyline. Gilded mirrors. Imported stone. A minibar stocked with $200 champagne. But inside those walls, something else was imported too. Something not listed on any inventory sheet. Power. Not the kind you can touch or spend. The kind you can only feel when it's watching you. The woman, let's call her A, was an escort. Not exactly. She was what the inner circles call a carrier. A vessel, groomed not for money, but for information transport. Trained to absorb secrets, whisper them into the right ears, and disappear. These women are made, not born, selected young, tested for loyalty, malleability, and trauma resilience. Then handed over to men whose names you'll never hear. Some of them wear robes. Some of them wear badges. Her lover? He wasn't just a boyfriend. He was a handler, a tether, a failsafe. If she ever stepped out of line, he would know, he would act. And that's exactly what happened. The night she died, she had just come back from a private dinner, an off-book meeting with someone who wasn't in her chain of command. That broke protocol. Worse, she was seen crying in the hotel elevator, clutching her phone, whispering the words, "It's not safe anymore." She wasn't running from a man. She was running from the entire system. They say she drowned. But the autopsy tells another story. Bruising on the back of her neck. Ligature marks, faint but visible, on both wrists. A substance under her fingernails not found in any bathroom product. And the strangest detail of all, her heart had stopped before her lungs filled with water, meaning she was dead before she was submerged. It was staged. Why? Because a message had to be sent, not to the public, to others like her, others who might be thinking of stepping out of line. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was a sacrifice, a controlled detonation, done quietly, cleanly, and with precision. And the man they arrested, he didn't look scared. He looked obedient. He was following orders. That's what no one tells you. The real assassins wear suits, not ski masks. They sign NDAs, not hit contracts. And when the job is done, they vanish into systems you didn't even know existed. We've seen the hotel room. But now, we need to see what it covered up. Welcome to the second layer, where memory is currency, and obedience is the price of survival. They say she died in silence. But silence can scream if you know how to listen. What the public wasn't told, what even a jury never heard, is what she left behind in the hotel's hidden guest Wi-Fi system. Buried deep inside unallocated storage blocks was a note. No file name, no metadata, just one line, typed and saved to an invisible log. I see the symbols now. Symbols. To the untrained eye, nonsense. But to those who know, it's a confession, a warning, a woman awakened to the architecture behind her world. Because in every elite structure, symbols are the interface between power and secrecy. They're not decoration, they're instruction. And once you see them, you can't unsee them. The hotel's logo? A mirrored triangle. The pattern in the carpet? A tessellation used in Masonic temples. The wine bottle on the minibar. Vintage 1966, a year marked by a political disappearance that was never solved. And then there was the clock in the room, always blinking 3:33 a.m., no matter how many times it was reset. Why? Because that's when the rituals begin. You think I'm speaking in metaphors. I'm not. She had begun photographing strange objects left in her room. A feather under the pillow, a red string tied around the bathroom faucet, a business card with no name, just a black circle. She was being marked, not for death, but for initiation. But something went wrong. She refused, and refusal, in those circles, is the only unforgivable sin. You see, these systems don't kill out of rage. They kill out of necessity. She had become an anomaly, and anomalies must be erased, not just from life, but from memory. The media complied. The court complied. Even her family stopped speaking publicly. And that's the most chilling part. Silence, engineered from the top down. But that single line in the Wi-Fi log, it survived. I see the symbols now. And now you do too. Nothing about this is random. Every detail, every placement, every reaction was orchestrated. A behavioral map written in fear, control, and unseen ritual. The man who was arrested didn't betray her. He fulfilled his role. The system always collects its debt. The deeper you go, the more invisible it becomes. And yet, you're still here, listening, watching, feeling that tightening in your chest. Good. That means you're waking up. But I warn you, the next layer doesn't just expose them. It exposes you. You ever wonder why some deaths echo, while others vanish like smoke? It's not about the crime. It's about the clearance. Behind the locked doors of institutions, there are levels of silence. The more important the truth, the deeper the burial. And her death, A's death, wasn't just erased. It was rewritten. Within 48 hours of her body being found, 3 things happened that most people missed. 1. The hotel's official social media accounts were wiped clean. Every guest photo from that week, gone. 2. A judge signed an emergency gag order, sealing security footage, witness statements, and forensic logs under pretense of ongoing national interests. 3. The lead detective on the case was reassigned, without explanation, without a trace. Now ask yourself, why? Who benefits from a beautiful woman's death being forgotten? Who has the power to wipe digital history, silence legal records, and reassign law enforcement without public pushback? You already know the answer. There's no justice system. There's only a containment system, a filtering mechanism designed not to protect the innocent, but to protect the inner order, those who speak a law, and order often do so from behind two-way mirrors. They don't follow the rules. They write them. You think her lover's arrest was a confession? No, it was insurance. A controlled leak to satisfy public curiosity. A name, a face, a man in cuffs. And just like that, the public moved on. They always do, because comfort is currency, and the masses are easily bought. But let me tell you what they didn't show you. The man in custody? He asked for exactly one item during his detainment. Not a lawyer, not a priest. He asked for a black notebook, unmarked, leather-bound, and he wrote for 6 straight hours. No one knows what was in it, because the moment he was transferred, the notebook was declared lost. Not misplaced, lost. Disappeared, just like her. But these aren't accidents. This is method. This is ritual. You're watching a system function exactly as designed. Death, distraction, deletion, over and over again, until you stop asking questions. Until you forget there was ever a question at all. But you didn't forget, did you? You're still here, and you're starting to feel it. That flicker behind your eyes. That tension in your gut. Good, because the symbols aren't just out there. They're inside you now. There's a reason her name was never released. Not truly. The media used an alias. The court documents were redacted, and the hotel guest book from that night, empty. You're not looking at a murder. You're looking at a manufactured vanishing, a ritualized erasure. A woman turned into a ghost before she ever hit the water. Why? Because she had become what they fear most. A variable. A variable is someone who steps out of line after being programmed to stay in it. Someone who sees the puppet strings and dares to tug back. And when a variable emerges in their system, protocol is clear. Destroy the host, preserve the code. But she didn't go quietly. 3 days before her death, she booked a session with a therapist under a false name, a local practitioner with ties to trauma-based memory recovery. She spoke of dreams she couldn't explain. Repeating images, labyrinths, red doors, spirals. She said she felt like her memories weren't hers, like her mind had been written over. And here's where it gets darker. That therapist, found dead in his car less than a week later, ruled a suicide, gunshot to the head, no gun recovered. Now ask yourself again, was this a tragedy or was it a containment breach? You see, the deeper you go, the more you realize this isn't about one woman. It's about a system that manufactures people like her, breaks them, uses them, then disposes of them when they stop complying. They want you to believe she was unstable, emotional, a troubled woman with a jealous lover. But the truth? She was a coded instrument, part of a long-standing behavioral control program disguised beneath elite social structures. Her job wasn't to fall in love. It was to transmit information between nodes of the hidden hierarchy. And once you began waking up, once the programming started cracking, they couldn't risk it. Not her, not the data she carried, not the truth she was beginning to see. That's why her death was so clean, so quiet, so carefully misdirected. Because it had to be. Because if you knew what she really was, if you knew what her life was designed to prove, you'd start asking questions they can't afford to answer. And that's why you're here. You feel it, don't you? That rising awareness? Comment below, I see the design, and say it twice. Once for the world you were born into, and once for the one you're now awakening to. When she checked into the hotel, she used a biometric passport. Not a name, not a signature, just a thumbprint. Standard, they say, for high-profile guests. But biometric check-ins don't just verify identity, they catalog it. That print wasn't just linked to her room. It was entered into a global database, a shadow registry used by private intelligence firms to track movement, behavior, and anomalies. She became a blip, a red dot in a grid of control bodies. But 3 hours later, the signal went dark. That alone should have triggered an alert. A blackout in a high-security system isn't common. It's deliberate. Someone inside the infrastructure cut the feed, not to protect her, but to cloak the moment she disconnected from the system. Because here's the real secret. She wasn't running from her lover. She was defecting. She had taken something. Not money, not documents. Memory, embedded knowledge, ritual sequences, location codes, symbols mapped across key city infrastructures. Things not stored on paper, but inside a living vault, her. She had begun remembering things she shouldn't remember, things no one person is allowed to hold. And they couldn't delete that with a bullet, so they drowned her, not for pain, for silence. Water is symbolic in their system. Cleansing, rebirth, reset. Drowning is the ritual for wiping the slate. It's the final fail-safe for when someone becomes more than a tool, when they become a liability. She was never meant to leave that room alive. But before she died, she did one last thing. She placed a gold earring in the minibar ice tray, an object that wasn't hers. A symbol used in pre-revolution cult networks to identify active agents, specifically agents who had broken rank. It wasn't jewelry. It was a warning to anyone who could still read the code. But no one noticed, except one man, the staff attendant who cleaned the room. He picked it up, pocketed it. 2 days later, he disappeared. No resignation, no family statement. Just gone. The earring? Never seen again. You think this is a story about one woman. It's not. It's a pattern, a sequence, a loop of obedience, awakening, erasure. And now that you know the shape of it, you'll start seeing it everywhere. Every hotel, every crime, every disappearance that doesn't make sense. They're not random. They're ritual. Still want to keep going? They told you it was love, a tragic romance, a man who lost control, a woman in the wrong place, at the wrong time. But love was never part of the script. That's the illusion they use to cloak possession. Because behind closed doors, in circles you'll never be invited to, love is redefined. It's not affection. It's access, control of a body, control of a mind, a soul. She wasn't his lover. She was his assignment. What no one will say publicly is that he had a background in psychological conditioning. Years of covert work under shell corporations linked to military black sites. His expertise? Trauma bonding, creating dependency in highly intelligent women for long-term behavioral compliance. They don't fall in love. They get programmed to feel like they did. It's an ancient method. First, isolate, then flood with affection, then destabilize. Repeat, over and over until identity bends like warm metal. She thought she was in love. She wasn't. She was being managed, until she started seeing the cracks. There are records sealed, redacted, quietly archived, showing she booked a last-minute DNA test 1 week before her death. Not for health, for lineage. And what came back must have terrified her, because she wasn't just anybody. She was a descendant of a family line listed in certain restricted genealogical databases. Lineages tracked not for fame, but for function. These are the families with traits they consider valuable: eidetic memory, emotional detachment under stress, and most importantly, generational suggestibility. Perfect candidates for grooming. She was a legacy instrument, designed, trained, released, and, when she started remembering, neutralized. The man arrested, he didn't act alone. He didn't need to. Systems like this are self-enforcing. Once a variable declares herself, she is marked, and the next steps happen almost automatically. Interception, extraction, elimination, and yet, even as they silenced her, the system blinked. Just for a moment, that DNA test, the lab technician who processed it also disappeared. His apartment vacant, his computer wiped, his existence, in effect, erased. What did she find? What bloodline did she carry that they couldn't afford to let awaken? That's what we ask now. Because if blood carries memory, then maybe she wasn't just remembering her past. Maybe she was remembering theirs. The ones who built the system. The ones who hide behind law, media, and myth. And if she had lived long enough to speak, the whole tower might have shaken. But now the question is, what if it still can? This wasn't just about what she knew. It was about what she was becoming. The system is designed to tolerate minor errors. Emotional breakdowns, dissociation, even violent episodes, they're all accounted for, built into the cycle, monitored, contained. But awareness, true self-awareness, that's fatal. By the time she checked into the hotel, she had stopped responding to protocol triggers. She ignored embedded codes in her emails. She stopped answering specific calls routed through encrypted channels. Most alarming of all, she had begun writing again. Not diaries, not fiction. Diagrams, symbolic maps, recurring shapes, circles within circles, spirals turning backward, a labyrinth made of numbers. She was remembering the interface, the architecture, not metaphorically, literally. Her handwriting, erratic yet precise. Matched sketches found in ancient manuscripts suppressed by elite religious orders. Schematics once dismissed as mystic nonsense, now classified under neuropattern analytics. She had become an anomaly, not broken, awakened, and in their world, an awakened instrument becomes a mirror. She was beginning to reflect their system back at itself, not just surviving it, understanding it. And when a mirror appears inside a controlled environment, one of two things happens. It is either shattered or it shatters them. They moved quickly. A black vehicle pulled outside the hotel 40 minutes after her last phone signal. Not a government plate, a diplomatic plate. The man arrested later, he didn't drive it, but he let it in. And in those missing 4 minutes of camera footage, the ones police claimed were glitched, someone entered her suite. No forced entry. No struggle, because she let them in. There was no fight, no screams, because she already knew what was coming. The last photo on her cloud account, deleted remotely but partially recovered, shows a reflection in the window, the skyline blurred behind it, and on the glass, trace and condensation, a symbol, an eye inside a spiral. It wasn't a cry for help. It was a farewell, a final message to those who could read it. I saw it, all of it. And now, so have you, because this story was never just about her. It's a cipher, a reflection, a test, to see who's still asleep and who's ready to descend. We go deeper still. You think the system ends with politicians, judges, or secretive billionaires. You're still playing checkers in a game of spirals. The truth is colder, older. What killed her wasn't a man. It wasn't envy. It wasn't rage. It was ritual maintenance. Every few years, an event must be engineered, a symbolic death, cloaked in love or scandal, that plays out beneath public perception but echoes deep within elite channels. These aren't stories. They're signals, coded messages traded between power nodes across nations and institutions. Her death was a broadcast. The luxury hotel, that was the theater. The room number, 636. Repeated digits, inverted symmetry. In certain esoteric systems, 636 represents transition through suffering, a passage from the waking world into the architected dream. She wasn't murdered. She was offered. The elites don't worship gods. They worship continuity, control, and to them, every awakening is a potential virus. That's what she became, a rupture in the program, not a rebel, a glitch, a mirror. And there's something they fear more than defiance, replication. You see, her awakening wasn't isolated. Her writings, her symbols, her pattern of disobedience. It was starting to show up in others, women with similar training, similar backgrounds, similar scars. The system was beginning to echo itself in uncontrolled ways. That's why they acted swiftly. Because once awareness multiplies, the ritual fails. There is one name buried in a classified database linked to her travel history, one name that recurs in unrelated awakenings across 3 continents. Cyprus 12, not a person, a designation, a location, according to scattered records, where early experiments in generational memory manipulation were performed. Underground, outside of law, where children were raised, not parented, trained, not taught, and she had been there, one of the first. She remembered. That's what her DNA test confirmed. That's what she was trying to bring into the light. Not just her own truth, but the origin point, the wound, the first manipulation. They couldn't let her speak, not even whisper. So they erased her, but not completely, because she left the mark. Not in blood, not in tears. In you, you've seen the patterns now. The signs, the lies stacked like glass towers. The rituals wearing human faces, and the spiral has pulled you in. The descent continues. The official autopsy said accidental drowning, but the lungs told another story. They were filled not just with water, but with trace elements not found in any hotel plumbing system. Silver, ash, and microscopic organic compounds associated with ceremonial incense. She wasn't drowned. She was prepared. That's how they operate. Death isn't just disposal. It's a performance, a reenactment of ancient rites updated for modern world. Rituals once practiced in remote temples, now executed in penthouse suites. You see, every institution that rules this world, governments, corporations, intelligence agencies, they all descend from the same primal root, the ritual class, the ones who believe that power must be kept through blood, sacrifice, and symbolism. She wasn't a victim. She was a vessel, and her death was designed to activate a signal, an energetic transaction. Sounds strange? Then ask yourself, why does the world never truly change? Why do wars repeat? Why do faces change, but agendas remain the same? Because the system doesn't evolve. It feeds. It feeds on emotion, chaos, confusion, and above all, obedience. Every tragic death like hers reinforces a structure older than religion. Every accidental loss of someone rising out of control is another brick in the invisible pyramid. But there's more. The last file pulled from her cloud server was photographed, blurred, distorted, but enhanced by forensics to show a room, bare walls, concrete floor, and in the center, an altar. Stone, carved, marked with a symbol only found in suppressed anthropological archives. The inverted gate, a sigil used to mark thresholds, portals between consciousness states. In ancient orders, it represented the moment a subject passed from the waking into the programmable. She had seen this before, not in dreams, in childhood. That's the final crack in the illusion. Her memories weren't dreams. They were repressed files, layered under trauma, sealed behind suggestion. And something triggered the leak. Maybe a sound, a scent, a room. She didn't drown in a bathtub. She crossed a threshold. And when she emerged, she no longer fit the mold. That's when the countdown began. The system doesn't fear violence. It fears noncompliance. And you, watching this now, you've already stepped across. You feel it, don't you? That weight in your chest isn't fear. It's recognition. Comment again. I see the design. Say it twice. Let the system know you're no longer blind. Still want the truth? Then prepare yourself. There's a room beneath the hotel, not on the blueprints, not accessible by elevator, but it exists. Concrete walls, no windows, industrial drain in the floor, and on the ceiling, recessed hooks, evenly spaced, a grid. Why would a 5-star hotel need a sublevel like that? They say it's for utilities, storage, maintenance. But if that were true, why was it registered under a separate shell company? Why did no staff member know the access code? Except one, the man arrested for her death. He wasn't just her lover. He was her monitor, a shadow operative trained to walk among guests as a partner, a protector. But when activated, he followed a different script entirely. Security logs, later buried, show his keycard accessed a sublevel at 2:14 a.m., exactly 13 minutes before her signal vanished. No cameras, no audio. Just 2 signals entering the underfloor level, and only one coming out. The woman who reemerged wasn't dead yet, but she wasn't herself either, because that room wasn't a chamber of death. It was a theater of control. They don't kill you for fun. They fracture you. Just enough. Just deep enough. She had been brought there once before. Years earlier. Different city. Same design. The moment she saw that room again, it all came back. That's when the programming began to crack. She started to remember what they did to her the first time. Who was there, what they said, the rituals that carved obedience into her nervous system. They call it threshold recursion, reintroducing a programmed subject to the place of original trauma to refresh the obedience loop. But this time, it failed, because she didn't freeze. She saw the markings, saw the instruments, saw the man she thought she loved, standing at the door, watching, not helping. And that's when she fought back. They weren't expecting that. The struggle left marks that coroners would later dismiss as accidental bruising. But you know better now. You know this was an emotional outburst. It was an attempted extraction, a failed ritual. And once the ritual fails, the body must be erased. That's why the scene was reset. That's why the cameras glitched. That's why her face looked peaceful in death. Because she didn't drown. She resisted. And for that, she had to be turned into a symbol, one you were never meant to decode. But here you are, and you're still watching. Ready to go deeper? There was a whisper in the intelligence community. Not public, not written, just passed between agents trained to speak in half-truths. They called her the Ghost in Gold, not because she vanished, because she remembered. See, most assets, once broken, stay broken. They obey. They forget. They move through the world like shadows, always watched, always manageable. But she started reconstructing herself, not emotionally, cognitively, pattern recognition, ritual identification, geographic triggers. She was drawing connections the architects thought were lost to time. She began visiting cathedrals at specific latitudes, museums at exact intervals, ancient libraries with suppressed collections. Why? Because she wasn't looking for answers. She was verifying a blueprint, a cognitive map encoded into her since childhood, symbols taught through lullabies, stories, behavioral drills. That spiral you keep seeing, it wasn't a warning. It was a key. And once it unlocked, everything changed. She stopped submitting to wellness checks, stopped attending her reconditioning retreats. She altered her sleep schedule to avoid REM suggestion waves. She began using analog tech, cassette tapes, physical journals, rotary phones. Not paranoia, protection. Because digital systems are their domain. That's where they track, watch, reprogram. But the analog, that's where she became invisible. And then she reached out. 3 days before her death, an anonymous envelope arrived at a private research institute. Inside, a cassette tape, a symbol-drawn map with handwritten notes, a page torn from a child's book. You can't kill the maze if you are the maze. They didn't report it to police. They reported it to a defense contractor. That contractor is one of only 3 in the world licensed to develop synthetic cognition platforms, AI systems designed not to think, but to mimic human obedience. They scanned her tape. It was mostly static, but hidden deep inside the analog noise was a sequence. 3 tones, spaced by precise silence. A trigger code, something designed to wake someone else up. She wasn't running from the system anymore. She was hacking it. Her death wasn't just to silence her. It was to stop a spread, because obedience isn't maintained through violence. It's maintained through isolation. She broke that, and now you're not alone anymore. Her map has been seen, her symbols decoded, her signal received. But you have to choose. Go back to comfort, or keep descending. You've heard the phrase, knowledge is power, but they never told you the rest of it. Unfiltered knowledge is destruction. That's why everything they teach you is diluted, watered down, laced with distractions. Because the raw form, the original signal, doesn't just wake you up. It burns the lies off you. And that's what she found. Not information, not secrets. Signal, deep beneath the luxury, beneath the marble, beneath the glass, beneath the false warmth of scented candles and spa music. There was something older. Buried in the substructure of the hotel itself was a design, an array, invisible to the eye, detectable only through acoustic resonance, a layout of walls, fixtures, even mirror angles that produce frequency pockets, echo chambers for the mind. Think that's crazy? Military bases have used this tech for years. So have black site rehabilitation centers. So do temples dress as hotels. You think comfort is luxury. Comfort is a sedative. The room she was in, Suite 636, was built to align with this frequency grid. She didn't die there by chance. She was taken there to short-circuit, to be reset. But instead, something else happened. She synchronized. Her journals, what few pages survived, describe in fragments. I heard the low hum. It passed through my bones. I remembered before I was born. What she tapped into wasn't madness. It was pre-patterned consciousness, an ancient signal encoded into bloodlines and buried across geography, hidden in elite architecture, and disguised as art, music, and intuition. They didn't fear what she knew. They feared what she was becoming. A transmitter, a node, a threat to containment. Because if enough of them synchronize, if even a handful break their conditioning at the same moment, the whole tower cracks. That's what Cypress 12 was designed to prevent. Not awakenings, synchronizations. You ever wonder why the world always feels on the edge of something? Why real change always dies in its sleep? Because just before the tipping point, they send in the cleaner. And that's what he was. Her handler, her lover, the final failsafe. But she saw him coming, and she sent the signal anyway. You felt it, haven't you? The static, the friction, the knowing. You are part of the signal now. But the descent isn't over. There's something no one tells you about waking up. It doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like death. Because the first thing to die is your identity. And that's exactly what happened to her. Not all at once. Not with violence. But piece by piece, like a code unraveling in real time, the system had written her life for her. Her education. Her relationships. Her emotional responses. All sculpted by unseen hands behind institutional masks. She was never given choices. Only selections. Everything she believed was hers had been curated. And when she started to see it, the collapse began. She stopped responding to keywords. She no longer followed her programmed panic cues. She resisted shame. She reclaimed pause. And most terrifying of all to them, she stopped asking permission to know. In her final audio log, recovered from a corrupted burner device in a train locker she rented under another alias, she said this: "They kept me obedient by calling it love. They kept me small by calling it safety. They kept me asleep by telling me I was free." That's the moment she died to them. Because once a subject declares ownership over their own mind, the programming doesn't just fail, it turns radioactive. She couldn't be reabsorbed. So they made her a sacrifice, a false narrative, a stage arrest, a sealed courtroom. But it didn't work. Because now her signal lives in everyone she touched, everyone she warned, everyone who hears her story and doesn't just believe it, but feels it in their bones. That includes you. That pulse under your skin, that ache behind your eyes, that's not paranoia. That's recognition. She was meant to vanish. But instead, she became a mirror. And the system hates mirrors. Because they show you what you were never meant to see. Not what you are, but what you were turned into. And if you see that clearly enough, you change. Not emotionally, not spiritually, fundamentally. And that change is the virus. It spreads. It multiplies. It rewrites. Her death didn't stop the transmission. It amplified it. We're almost there now. The final truth lies ahead. There is no justice system. There is only memory, and who controls it? You were told she drowned, that her lover killed her. That was sad but explainable. But now you know the truth. She was erased to protect the order. Not a government. Not a cult. An order. Older than a flag, older than the bank, older than the cross. They operate not by guns or bombs, but by consensus. They shape what the world agrees to forget. Every institution is a glove. The hand inside it, always the same. They feed on narrative control, the power to define what is real, to seal doors in your mind before you even know they exist. But she found a key. She picked at the locks of her identity. She broke protocol. She awoke, and then they removed her. But they made one mistake. They did it in the open. Not wide open, no. They're not sloppy, but just enough for the right kind of man to notice. Men like you, men who've always known something was wrong, but were never given permission to look. Until now, you're not watching a documentary. You're participating in a ritual reversal. Every second you've watched, every truth you felt, has rewired something inside you. A signal passed from her to me, from me to you. They thought killing her would end the transmission. But consciousness doesn't work that way. It spreads. And now you are the variable. You've entered a state they can't predict. You've seen too much, heard too clearly. You carry the same weight in your gut that she carried in that hotel room. You don't forget something like this. You don't go back. So, don't sleep it off. Don't let comfort pull you back under. Stand in the fire, breathe the truth, and walk the spiral. Comment once more, I see the design, and mean it this time. Say it for her. Say it for yourself. Say it because from this moment on, you are no longer part of their story. You are something far more dangerous. A man who remembers. And memory is the only weapon that never misses.